Beneath the chalky cliffs and ancient valleys of southern Europe, hidden under centuries of frozen soil and layered sediment, rest the remains of a human group that once stood closest to us. For more than a century and a half, they have existed on the margins of our own narrative, sometimes portrayed as savage predators, other times as doomed evolutionary dead ends. But today, their silence has been broken. Ancient DNA is finally telling their story, and what it reveals challenges nearly everything we believed about the true beginnings of the Neanderthals. For decades, the question of where Neanderthals originated has remained unanswered. Their fossils appear across a vast geographic range, from Iberian caves to the distant steppes of Siberia, spanning hundreds of thousands of years. Yet, embedded within their genetic code lies evidence of a much deeper past, one that predates their known presence in Europe. Their DNA suggests an origin story rooted far earlier, in a world before Neanderthals had fully emerged on the European continent. In a recent groundbreaking study, an international group of geneticists and paleoanthropologists examined Neanderthal DNA recovered from fossils across multiple regions. These samples ranged from the well-known Vindija Cave in Croatia to the remote Altai mountains of southern Siberia. By combining genetic data with archaeological and climatic evidence, the researchers uncovered links between environmental change, population movement, and interactions with other ancient humans. The findings make one thing clear: Neanderthals were never an isolated evolutionary branch. Around 600,000 years ago, they diverged from a shared ancestor with modern humans, likely Homo heidelbergensis, somewhere in Africa or Eurasia. While this split has long been accepted, the precise location where Neanderthals first emerged remained unknown, until now. The research team analysed both nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA, the latter inherited through maternal lines. These genetic materials were extracted from bones and teeth, preserved in permafrost-like conditions, allowing remarkable preservation. The sequences were then compared with hundreds of ancient and present-day genomes from populations around the world. What emerged from this comparison was unexpected. The earliest Neanderthals carried genetic markers from an even more ancient population, one that appears to have originated in the East, possibly in Central or East Asia, before moving westward into Ice Age Europe. One of the most revealing discoveries came from the genome of the Altai Neanderthal, a woman who lived over 120,000 years ago. Her DNA showed clear evidence of interbreeding with another enigmatic human group, the Denisovans. This finding reshaped the Neanderthal narrative, revealing it not as a linear rise and fall, but as a complex web of encounters, genetic exchanges, and repeated migrations. The genetic record also highlights substantial diversity among Neanderthals themselves. Early Western Neanderthals, such as those from Spain's Sima de los Huesos site, dated to more than 430,000 years ago, display genetic patterns distinct from their Eastern counterparts. This implies that Europe was settled multiple times by different Neanderthal populations, some replacing earlier groups, others mixing or coexisting. But if Neanderthal ancestors originated farther east, what forces pushed them across such vast distances? Climate likely played a central role. Ice Age Europe was shaped by extreme cold and dramatic environmental shifts. Advancing glaciers forced populations south into refuges, while warmer interglacial periods allowed expansions northward. These cycles likely facilitated repeated contact between distant human groups, including early relatives of modern humans, much earlier than previously assumed. The DNA revealed another surprising layer. A small but meaningful portion of Neanderthal genes appears to come from an even older hominin population, possibly Homo erectus, pointing to deep ancestral roots in Asia. This suggests that Neanderthals did not arise from a single birthplace, but from a broad, interconnected territory stretching across thousands of kilometers. What emerges is a picture radically different from the old stereotype. Neanderthals were not sluggish, isolated survivors clinging to extinction. They were mobile, resilient, and capable of adapting to harsh environments through repeated migrations. And the next major clue in their story comes from a region that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. That region is Vindija Cave in the Caucasus Mountains, a rugged passageway linking Europe and Asia. Here, researchers uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal child who lived more than 40,000 years ago. Her DNA differed noticeably from Western European Neanderthals, instead showing close genetic ties to Eastern populations, echoing patterns seen in the Altai Neanderthal. This discovery reinforced the idea that the Caucasus functioned not as a barrier, but as a vital corridor connecting continents. The genetic timeline reconstructed from these findings is astonishing. Between roughly 100,000 and 60,000 years ago, Neanderthals expanded, retreated, and re-expanded across Eurasia multiple times. Each movement left subtle genetic traces, like annotations in a long-lost manuscript, revealing repeated episodes of migration and contact with other human groups, including our own ancestors. This matters because Neanderthal history is inseparable from human history. Today, every non-African human carries approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. This genetic legacy is the result of interbreeding events, some occurring in the Middle East, others perhaps farther east as modern humans began leaving Africa around 60,000 years ago. But new genetic evidence suggests that some interactions occurred far earlier, over 200,000 years ago, long before the major human expansion out of Africa. These findings point to cycles of contact, separation, and reconnection that unfolded over hundreds of thousands of years. So why did Neanderthals disappear around 40,000 years ago, despite their adaptability? Genetics offers part of the answer. Toward the end of their existence, Neanderthal populations became increasingly small and isolated. This led to inbreeding, reduced genetic diversity, and greater vulnerability to disease and environmental change. Meanwhile, modern humans, benefiting from larger social networks, expanded trade systems, and more adaptable technologies, spread rapidly across Neanderthal territories. Yet, the genetic evidence makes one truth unmistakable. Neanderthals did not simply vanish. They endure within us. Their genes continue to influence modern human biology, shaping immune responses, fat metabolism, and even skin adaptation to sunlight. In this sense, Neanderthals never truly disappeared, they became part of us. As ancient DNA techniques continue to advance, researchers are now detecting Neanderthal genetic traces in unexpected places. Cave sediments without visible bones, ancient tools bearing microscopic residues, even fossilized dental plaque. Each discovery refines our understanding of a species whose origins were far more fluid and far-reaching than static museum displays suggest. The true origin of Neanderthals is not a single dot on a map. It is a story of movement, interaction, and adaptation across continents. It is the history of people shaped by ice, bound by encounters with other humans, and connected to landscapes thousands of kilometers apart. And as this evidence accumulates, one conclusion becomes unavoidable. To understand Neanderthals is to understand ourselves. Within our DNA lie echoes of their endurance, their hardships, their successes, and their survival against impossible odds. They endured environments that would overwhelm most modern humans, hunted in lethal cold, and still adapted. The wind that tore through their shelters, the firelight dancing across cave walls, the shared meals, and the stories we will never hear. All of it shaped who we are today. And when we follow their path, we are not merely uncovering ancient history. We are recovering the missing chapters of our own story.